Hello, friends. This is Reflections, a religious affairs program sponsored by Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where together we do God's work with human hands. I'm Karen Winkel, one of the co-hosts of this program, along with Gregory Waldrop. I pastor at United Church of Paducah, and Gregory's at Fountain Avenue, United Methodist Church. Good to see you, Gregory.
Glad to be right here with you.
And glad you're with us.
Exactly. Glad you all are here with us. We're glad today to have our monthly segment where we introduce and get better acquainted with one of our pastors and churches in the Paducah Cooperative Ministry. We have with us Paul Mullikin, who's the pastor at Arcadia United Methodist Church, now for 3 years, is this?
2.5 years. It'll be 3
years.
this June.
Your third year. Welcome, Paul. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Tell us about you and about Arcadia. Start that conversation.
Well, I have been in the United Methodist Ministry pretty much all my adult life. I tell folks I went from being a kid at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, to in the ministry, and have served mainly in West Tennessee churches. I received part of my training down in Georgia, but came to Kentucky 2.5 years ago and absolutely love it here. Was appointed to Arcadia United Methodist Church, which is a delightful church at 261 Lone Oak, across from the Paducah Middle School. And it is a beautiful church built by Brother Rail when he was here several years ago. And it's a small church with a big heart that has a welcoming spirit, which I really enjoy serving at.
And fabulous signs out front. I think
Oh, yeah.
probably anybody that's driven on Lone Oak knows that they're not just thought-provoking or inspiring, they're clever.
Yes, we have a lady in our church, Vicki Katermas, who does an excellent job with that. That's one of the worries I don't have to have, because she comes up with things. I've provided her a few things in the past, but usually I trust her to just come up with, and I've heard more comments on people. Some people who visited at our church or just have heard about our church, they know about the sign more than anything.
So talk just a little bit about your call. For some people it's like a lightning bolt experience, and for other people it's kind of a gradual awareness of a call to ministry. Talk about yours.
For me, my call to ministry was almost a natural step for me. I was born and raised in the church. In fact, at St. Stephen's, the secretary there was a lady named Sue Bell. She was hired when I was 3 years old. She used to joke about that there were marks where I teethed on the edge of her desk when Mom would bring me there for circle meetings. Was fully involved in the church all of my life. And yet there comes a time in all of our lives, no matter if we are raised in the faith, that we have to make those kind of decisions. And as I was getting into my younger days of considering where I wanted to do and what I wanted to be, one of the most natural things seemed to be for me to do whatever is faithful to help and be a pastor in God's church, which I have been all my life before. And so between my junior and senior year of high school, that's when I really came to the assurance that this is indeed what I was called to do. So I went into college planning on that.
Where did you go to college?
Lambeth University. Was college back then, but now it's university in Jackson, Tennessee. When I was a sophomore in college, I took on a 10-week summer job as serving as an assistant pastor and a worker in a community of Big Sandy, Tennessee. Now, for a city boy from Memphis, it was a pretty large cultural shock. And I would joke with folks about how in my home church I would sing in the choir and be a part of different worship experiences there. But in Big Sandy, in those 6 little churches, they don't sing, they sang. They have a different song selections that I was brand new to me, learning songs like Just a Little Talk with Jesus, Come and Dine, and songs that some may question the theology of, but there's a heart there, a trust that helps you through the difficult times of life. And so I got converted to the country then, and have spent most of my ministry not far from the river, and but have served in several different places in Tennessee. I committed to long-term ministry. I believe that What's important for a church and a minister is to grow together, to not just have a few bag of tricks and after a few years when you run out of that to go somewhere else, but once you've done the things you're good with, then to go a little bit deeper and see where else you want to go in ministry. And I've had an opportunity to do that a couple of times at other places. I served 7 years in Decaturville, Tennessee, and 10 years in Selmer, Tennessee. So it's fun to be able to help overcome the newness of enjoying one another's fellowship, to kind of being more honest and open and growing in our faith.
Seminary?
Went to Emory, Candler School of Theology. I finished that. I had 4 little churches in Lafayette, Georgia, when I was there. Then after I was back in the ministry for a while, I found myself serving in places where I was pretty well the only full-time minister in the community. And because of that, would have issues of people coming for help with emotional, spiritual problems that sometimes seem to be overwhelming almost. And you want to do what you can to guide folks appropriately. So I ended up going and working on a doctorate of ministry in pastoral care and counseling. Did that at Vanderbilt and finished that a few years ago. And it's been very helpful for me as I continue to deal with the family's nature of a church, how we seek to try to work out our differences and find our ability to live a life of faith in the good times as well as the most difficult times of life.
You're approaching 25 years in ministry? Is that not general?
30-something.
30-something
years, yes.
Counting.
Started in 77, long time ago. Yeah, it's amazing.
The life of the church has changed quite a bit since then.
Yes, there's been some challenges in the church. And it's interesting, though, that as we encounter the different changes of life, there's some basic experiences of life that remain the same. And that's one of the reasons why the Word of God becomes the living Word of God, is that some of the names, some of the descriptions of life events may come in different shapes, forms, and fashions. But all in all, there's a deepness there that resonates with all of us, a longing to see that there's something beyond ourselves, that the world doesn't surround us, and that when the life around us begins to fall apart or to be challenged, we've seen that a lot in our nation and our world today, where a lot of issues of fear and anxieties of the economy, of what's happening throughout the world, we begin to say, well, is there any hope? And some people tend to say, well, only God can help us. Well, yes, God can help us, but God, I truly believe, works with us as we seek to be faithful in responding. It's kind of a mutual cooperation that we have with God. We can't do it without God, and God's not going to be able to, or will not do things without us as we cooperate with God.
Right. One of my favorite theologians calls it a responsible grace.
Yes. Right. And that's what I seek to try to encourage folks to have. One of the things that, as I've done at various times in churches, teaching disciple Bible study and such, is realizing there's different approaches in life, and in our lives, we have to choose some things. I used to have to juggle between family and work and church. And when you do that juggling, sometimes some things are left in the air while you're holding something. And so family might be predominant, and other times church might be predominant, or school. And that's the same way in our lives, that there's sometimes we really focus on doing our work and doing what we can, and there's other times that all of our work and all of our efforts are not going to make the difference, that we really hold on to our faith and hold on to what God is doing in our lives and in our hearts. So I think that that's the balance that we have in life, the rhythms of life, of when we are in community and work together, or step aside and have some solitude to listen and be still and hear whatever it is that God has for us. And I seek to try to help my church learn that as we go along.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Arcadia
Yes.
and what's going on there. What's exciting to your congregation? Where are you feeling the Spirit leading you?
We have a few different kind of things that are happening that they are enjoying with one another. One of the things they started in the past year, they had done years ago and had stopped for some reason. There's a group called the Cinnamon Sisters, we call them, and every month they gather together to make homemade sweet rolls. My nickname for them, as I abbreviate them, is the Sin Sisters. But they know they are wonderful folks who, more than anything else, they enjoy the fellowship of sharing together and working together, and the resources that they raise from that has done all kind of different ways of working, reaching out in mission and ministry, or doing some things in the church that we wouldn't be able to do. We have a men's prayer group that meets on a regular basis. It's a small group that lifts up the concerns that's before us, and at various times during the year, sometimes the women will have a Bible study that they work together. We have our regular worship, Sunday school and worship. Worship is an important part of Arcadia. The music is an amazing music program for the size of the church. It's probably one of the strongest small number choirs that we have around. Mary Jane McGuire is our song director, and out of the 8 or 9 or so that we have in the choir, she pulls a lot out of them. We try to provide opportunities for folks to come and seeing that worship is a time that we indeed glorify God, but we do that as a community of faith. That sometimes in worship, that's the only time that a lot of people are there lifting their voice in song, or having someone reach out and touch them on the shoulder and letting them know that they are cared about and that they are loved. It's a part of, like all families, that we care about each other all the time, but there's importance for us to gather as the community of faith. And so we seek to do that. I try to encourage the church, as they have always been faithful in mission and ministry. They participate in several of the programs that are available in the community, with the family kitchen that we provide 3 or 4 times through the year. We provide food for the St. Nicholas Clinic at times. When the ice storm hit, we sought to try to watch out for one another. We are excited about helping those who have come to provide some relief care. We've provided foods for the workers, the volunteer workers who have come into our midst. We even had a meal at the church, which was more than anything else just a chance to be warm and fellowship together, and opened it up to people in the community who hadn't been in our church before. Didn't have a large number, but it was enough to really have a sense of relief of like that we're not isolated alone, that the world isn't completely cold.
The ice hadn't gotten us.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
it's amazing. So.
And then I'm remembering something that I read in the newspaper, a new endeavor related to helping provide some support for folks who are in a relationship with someone who's engaged in substance abuse.
Yes, yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Greg and I and Northside United Methodist Church work together as the downtown United Methodist churches, and we've sought to relate to one another as a healing parish, realizing that part of the work of Christ is bringing wholeness and healing in people's lives. And we've tried as cooperative church to share things together, and one of the outgrowths of that dialogue has been the developing of a faith partner team. The faith partners are a group of folks who are seeking to learn and understand more about addiction and recovery. They seek to help church members and all of us to be not only understanding in our mind, but also in our heart, having a sensitivity toward that, being more aware of resources. And when we started this Faith Partners team, our sister church, Grace Episcopal, joined with us. And we even now are in conversation with cooperating with the local library about providing resources there. And we're just now kind of getting in that process there. We provided a training for clergy and other church leaders last year, I believe it was, and look forward to providing other training for that as well. And in the midst of all of that, of as I sought to try to respond to some of the needs that I had in my local church and aware of in the community, we have a lot of folks who have family members, either children or spouses or parents, who are struggling with addiction, some in recovery, some not. And there is a resource that is by Pat Springer, I believe it is. It's called Conquering Codependency. And people have a difficult time sometimes dealing with that particular word because it's we open this up. It's a class that goes through 12 steps for codependence. It is based upon the 12 steps that many people have heard of for Alcoholics Anonymous. It realizes that the 12-step process is a spiritual process, and that typically you can basically fill in the blank of whatever the struggle you have in your life. Yours might be an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction. Yours might be an emotional addiction to a relationship that is not healthy for you. Yours might be for anger or for bitterness or for whatever the symptom of that sin or that brokenness in your life. And so what Conquering Codependency does is that it provides an opportunity for those of us who may or may not have persons directly in our lives, but in our family of faith, in our church, we have people who are struggling with issues of addiction, or we have people who have relatives who are struggling. And that's one of my desires for this, is for me to understand someone who might be going through that. I needed to hear and listen what's going on. And what's amazing, we have a small group that's working on a weekly basis on these steps. It's not a sense of an in-depth study of it. It's just an overview to kind of get a grasp of it. And so we're having this now for these folks. We have resources available for other groups who want to do that. We have a video series that Grace Episcopal bought with some of the resource funds that they had called See It, Say It videos that we're providing for. There's been interest in the Paducah Middle School to utilize this. Helps youth to be able to, when they're concerned about a friend who might be making some bad behavior choices, it gives them the ability to confront that friend in a non-threatening way, to say that I care about you, but this is what I see and this is what I'm afraid that might be happening in your life, to learn to listen to the other, and then to express clearly what your hopes are and to share what you're willing to do to help. So it does that not just with youth to youth, but a staff person or a teacher to a child. It does it for children, for parents, how to talk to their children. And so we want to make those kind of resources available for us, knowing that God has provided all kinds of ways for us to be a part of the healing work that He has to offer for us. So, I seek to do that. One of the things that I have done since I've came to Arcadia a couple of years ago, my concern was how to meet the children and the youth of the community. When I served before, I had been in county seat towns in western Tennessee. And when I serve in that area, I have an opportunity to meet a lot of the children and youth because they're a part of my church. But coming to Paducah, being one of many churches, and wondering how to do that, one of the things I've done is I just volunteer a couple hours each week to go to the Paducah Middle School and to provide a service to them, to work in the lunchroom and have a chance to greet all the kids when they come and they leave, and to just to be a presence there, to hopefully help, if a kid's having a tough day, to let them know that somebody cares, And it's been interesting to see that, because now as I go out in the community, some of the kids recognize me. "Hey, aren't you that fellow that's at school?" And I said, "Yes." But it helps me to get out of the four walls of the church and to experience folks who are in different parts of this world. So,
and you don't have any idea the influence that you have and the impact that you have, even on kids that you don't visit with. I'm thinking back on my own experience growing up, that there were people like that I esteemed and had affection for, but I might have been too shy to visit with them. So that'll have a lasting effect.
That probably fits with my idea of ministry is that it's to be present and to plant the seeds and to trust God and to doing what God is doing, and not to get anxious about whether or not folks respond in a certain way or do a certain thing, because it's not what I'm about, it's what God is doing. It's not like that I'm bringing God's presence into the school. God is already there. I just help to remind folks to take notice, and when people come into my church, many times it's folks who have sought to struggle with holding on to their faith in the midst of a shaky world, you know. So I think it's important for us to hold each other up and to realize it's not up to us alone to overcome what struggles we have in life. I probably came by that really early in my ministry when I was in Big Sandy. The senior minister, his wife was a delightful lady and a real comical kind of lady, and there would be many times I would go into her kitchen and she'd be washing dishes and doing things and stressed out with the basic responsibilities of life, and she'd make a comment, "Lord, you overestimated me today." And I don't know what she was talking about, because there are those times we feel like we got more on us than we can handle. But yet, as I thought about what she said, it concerned me, because what she was sharing was a belief that comes from the Scriptures. Really, Paul's letters, one of Paul's letters in the New Testament, where it says God's not going to test you or tempt you more than what you can handle. And as I continued on in the ministry, I encountered folks having some pretty tough tests, some trials that were just unimaginable, as I'm sure y'all have experienced in y'all's ministry. And if it was just left to me, I don't know how I could handle those kind of tests and trials. So I thought either the Scripture's mistaken or what's going on here. And it was God wrong to say that God's not going to put on you more than you can handle? Well, then I had to go back to my grammar that I learned when I ended up being an English major with Bob Hazelwood at Lambuth University. Yeah. That reminding that the word you is a pronoun, but is it a singular or is it a plural pronoun? When I say I or me, it, that's singular. If I say us, them, that's plural. If I say you, well, I could say you, Karen, or I could say you, the folks who are moderating this program, or you, the church. Could be plural or singular. So you have to consider the context. I should have thought it's a letter that Paul wrote, not to an individual, to a church. But I wasn't. I wanted to make sure even further than that, and to find out in the Greek, where the New Testament is written in Greek, the Greek word for a singular you and a plural you are different.
Right.
And Paul used the plural one. Changes the whole meaning of that verse. When God says, "I'm not going to put more on you than you can handle," He's not saying, "Paul, by yourself, you got to pull up your bootstraps and handle all these burdens." It says that, "Paul, you need to be able to know that I've given you a community of faith.
Right.
I've given you resources to come from." And when he says, also Paul says another place, "Bear ye another one's burdens," that means I need to let you hold me up when I'm down. And then I'll help you hold you up when you're down. And together, God's going to give us the resources to handle it. So that's the message I want to remind people about, to not try to do it by yourself. Receive from God the strength that God will give you. Receive from others the strength that God gives you through them. And don't look at a church to say, what can it do for me? But how can we together grow in our relationship together?
I know you've got 4 children? 4 children?
I have 3 children, and then I married about a year and a half ago, and my new wife has 3 children, so we have 6. It's like the Brady Bunch without Alice. And an interesting year is before us. My daughter is getting married in Mississippi in about 2 weeks, and my wife's daughter is getting married in New York in July. We've told the other daughter she cannot get married this year, but a large family, and they're grown, but we're working on having the blendedness of family life. I come from a family of 6 myself in Memphis, Tennessee, and all. So, but one of the things I have learned when I left my family in Memphis and went to Big Sandy, I remember a scripture verse that took on a whole new meaning for me, when it says that you leave brothers and sisters and fathers and all this, God will restore it 100-fold. I thought maybe God was talking about heaven. No, what God was talking about for me now is that every church I've been at, I've come to find more mamas and daddies and brothers and sisters, and my family just keeps growing. So that's why I refer often to Arcadia United Methodist Church as the Arcadia family of faith. Because it is a family. It's a family church, but it's not an exclusive family church. It's a family that opens its heart and is more than willing to adopt others in to our walk and our journey together. And they did so with me, and they have undergirded me and loved me in so many wonderful ways. And so it's a joy to kind of return that kind of love and joy and service to them as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, our time has just flown, and I want to be sure that you hear from us our thanks for your presence here and your beautiful sharing, and you've just woven together your own faith and the life of the church in lovely ways, and want to thank you also for being such an important part of Paducah Cooperative Ministry, and so thank you for being with us. Gregory, good to be with you. And good that you've been with us. Thank you for joining us, and do again here on Reflections, and join us with Paducah Cooperative Ministry in whatever way you can, however you can, doing God's work with our human hands. Shalom.
Shalom.
In mission together